Hey, what's going on, AmCon? Mike here. Wanted to take the time and the opportunity to talk to you guys about your most frequently asked questions. We all obviously get a lot of questions every single day, and what we decided to do is in a webinar-based format, which means we're live, and also recording, to offer you the answers to a lot of your questions, especially as they pertain to American Contingency and all the things that are happening in our world today. So if you have questions and you're on this live right now, we're going to start accumulating more people. You could ask your questions, and Dustin's moderating this for me so he could type out the question and I can answer it live for you today. And I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that were asked, including the top 5 questions that were a priority to you. First off, I want to say thank you to all the members of American Contingency that are members, unpaid and paid, who believe in the mission, which is to prepare people for the worst case scenario. This takes place in education, in training, in meeting, and building our social networks. So, without further ado, I'm going to start answering questions. Let's start off with the top 5 questions, and feel free at any time, you're not interrupting me by typing your question in, but can't do that. Feel free to comment or leave your comments and questions inside the message box on the Zoom on your screen. So the number one question that's asked, am I going 5 to 1, Dustin, or you want me to do 1 to 5?
Do 1 to 5.
All right. So number 1 is SOP, Standard Operating Procedures, how to organize and train. So one of the things that's unique about American Contingency as a network is the fact that we operate decentralized, which means, yes, we have an HQ. Headquarters is located here in Utah. The message, the avocation, the education is centrally located, but we have decentralized, meaning we've allowed organizations to stand up organically on their own. And that's important because if you try to control and manage groups that are displaced from you physically, it often doesn't work. And I've seen this take place in various forms, including business. So standard operating procedures are important to establish based in your own groups, in your own cities, towns, and states. Now, what we're going to continue to roll out is these standard operating procedure content videos to establish best practices in establishing SOPs. For example, we did how to conduct a meet. There's ways to conduct several different kinds of meets, but setting a professional meet for this kind of thing, which is a movement to lend itself into preparedness for yourself, your community, and your families, it's a little bit different than a standard Fortune 500 corporation meet. So make sure you watch that meeting video if you haven't seen it already. And then how to organize and train. Well, it starts with stepping up, like getting off the bench. Somebody has to volunteer. We don't have a preference on how that takes place as long as you organize yourself in your task organization with some semblance of organization that makes sense based on your geographical location. For example, if you're in northern Utah, you are not going to be organized like you would be in San Francisco. 2 very different ways of organizing. One, because of the proximity of people and relationship to each other. Also, the time it takes for those people to actually assemble. We want you to focus on real practices by rehearsing and going through scenarios on what you would need to interoperate. One consideration is what happens in the worst case scenario to infrastructure. Typically, it's shut down or shut off. So you lose electricity, you might lose the cell phone towers, you might lose the ability to communicate on GSM or CDMA or any other means. So if you lose that capability, what's your contingency to communicate? And then how are you going to rendezvous with each other or assemble with each other given the fact that your communications are down? Those are important things that you need to flesh out at your local level that are going to affect your task organization and also the things that you need to specifically train in. I like to give you guys the flexibility and freedom to do all those things because I want to see you fail and optimize the process and the organization. You are going to make mistakes. We are making mistakes in how we stood up American Contingency and not realizing this, the abstraction of the social network, which is you can't control the way people think, how they feel. You can moderate it and do your best to do so. But when you decentralize these organizations, you can't control them from one central hub via a message box or a voice box, which is me talking into a mic. What you can do is empower people to stand up on their own based on their circumstance, to stand up their own American contingency to be prepared for that worst case scenario. Look, the worst case scenario isn't just political divisive things that are happening in our lives. It could be a natural or man-made disaster in your own backyard. So again, empowering yourself to do these things is important because you need to learn through the process. Now, what I owe you in standard operating procedures is some of the processes that are going to optimize your success, and we will continue to do that. Next week, I have a planned SOP brief on how to properly plan and organize your group in best practice. I hope that helps. Dustin, you think that's good? Yeah. If you think of any sub-questions from the spiel, feel free. Anybody out there who's listening to this and anybody out there, or Dustin who's out there 10 feet away.
We have questions filtering in right now. So as they continue to filter in, once you get through these top 5, we're going to feed you some more questions if they're not addressed.
Feed me.
Yes, sir.
I want you to feed me. Number 2, AmCon meetups with Mike, training. Yes. The answer is yes. One of the things that I'm waiting for is I have several facilities that are being built right now in construction. Our contractor right now is busting his hump to get this stuff done so that we could host training in person. For American Contingency members that are vetted, I will offer training to you for free. Not only will I offer that training for you for free in-house, meaning at my facility in Heber City, Utah, but I will also offer that training virtually, meaning I will have a media crew there filming all the training that we do for American Contingency. One of the first things that we're going to do is do what's called a tactical forum. I'm really excited about this because it's my own concept and idea, which I haven't seen done in the tactical space, which is having a discussion about tactics. Maybe it seems kind of boring, but from my experience in doing key leader engagements, crosstalks, and very cognitive and, ancillary conversations, you start to realize what benefit you'll get out of talking about tactics versus just executing technical skill sets. That's easy to rehearse, easy to practice on your own. But the first time I realized this when it's at an everyday carry conceal course I taught, where I asked the question, what is your criteria to use deadly force? And typically the response was something to do with a legal jargon or line that was extracted out of a legal doctrine. That's fine, and you got to know that stuff via your conceal carry protocol. But it's important that you understand cognitively what your decision is to utilize or use deadly force. And that's not often discussed. It was never discussed for me before I killed my first terrorist in combat in fear of my life. So that is an example of what we'll do in the near future. My estimates are in January, we'll be done with that. And I'll be offering those videos, even live webinars like this, completely live, completely free for members, every member that's not only vetted, but if you're in person, you have to be a vetted member to come train with me in person and to attend our expo. This is going to be a second question because I've been asked it recently. How do you get vetted? And why are we getting vetted? Well, you can get vetted by following the link on American Contingency on our homepage. And the reason we want you to get vetted is because it's another layer of security, not just for us, but for all the other members that are involved. You are less likely to be a threat, not just physical threat, but a nuisance and threat if you are being vetted. That's the same reason that one of the reasons that we've decided to actually take membership monies is we have to support locals. That's the reason that we're on locals as an application, because it protects us from censorship and from being banned. So we need to mutually support them as well as grow what American Contingency is. One promise that I've made to you, and I've kept that promise, is I will not use the profits of American Contingency to benefit my business, Fieldcraft Survival. And I won't do that. I refuse to do that. But what it will do is be reciprocated back in free training, free content, like me, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, sitting in here talking to you via webinar, because you have we are mutually benefiting from each other. That leads into another question, which is, Mike, why would you make it a business? And I'll answer that right now. Well, because I don't want to be federally regulated by the U.S. government. That's why. If I become a 501c3 and C4, I've worked with nonprofits my entire life, and I've seen them fail because of overregulation, depending on who's in charge. And right now, based on who's going to be in charge, I don't want us to get suppressed, deleted, audited, or legally shut down because they don't like what we do. So I'm a capitalist, meaning I believe in free markets, and I believe in operating that way via the Department of Commerce in Utah, who has completely supported us and everything that we stand for. So I will flex. I know business ethics, and I follow certain values, and I won't compromise that, and that's what we'll do. A great example is us raising $20,000 and plus an additional $5,000 worth of toys that you sent us for charity. Today, we're accumulating all the receipts to be very transparent in how that's presented, because I want every single person to know how much we collected, how much we spent, and what's left over is going to be donated to a nonprofit of our choice. So those are main reasons, but yes, we will continue to do AmCon meetups. There are a lot of things changing right now with the COVID circumstance. Some people have predicted by fall we will be completely back to normal because of the vaccine that's being released. There is a law that is, I believe, supported by the Supreme Court called HIPAA, which restricts people being told to give their personal information when it comes to if they had the actual vaccine for travel, for business, whatever it may be. That's less likely to be a thing. And I know a lot of people are fearful of that. I am not taking the vaccine. Why? Because I've had COVID. I have natural immunity, and I'm good with that. And I won't take it if forced to do so. So depending on how this rolls out will dictate how we are able to accumulate or assimilate, in this case, in person. Regardless, we will figure out a path to educating you via AmCon. Any follow-up on that, Dustin?
No. The questions are flowing through right now. We're just, I feel like getting through these top five is going to answer a lot of the questions we have.
You're just telling me to hurry the hell up?
No, we're organizing them over here.
Okay. Number 3, headquarters role and support to groups. Very good question. Headquarters is like 4 people. A lot of people think this is a mass conglomerate, and it's not. It's a few number of people working their butts off every single day, bringing you what is AmCon. Now, what you have to understand what AmCon is AmCon is you. But as the headquarters element, it's our responsibility to figure out a path to success here. The path to success, which will be defined in the next question, is multifaceted and very progressive, and it scales rapidly. Our role is to provide you support via your groups. Now, that support will begin to roll out in the near future. We are asking for tactical patience because there's a whole bunch of things that are transpiring right now, not only in the political system and our government, but also our society. On top of that, we as American Contingency have been suppressed, banned, deleted, and every other verb that you could think of associated with trying to shut us down. But we won't be stopped. Why? Because I believe in the mission, and I'm used to this. We were just talking about this morning with targets on our backs. I've had a bounty on my head for doing the right thing in counterterrorism. I'm not giving up. I think this is important. I think there is a gap definitively in our media and information and how we're being controlled and manipulated. And I think we need to fill that void. So we're going to do that. In January, once these things start coming unraveled, including our own legal construct for American Contingency, which I don't need to bore you with those legal details, we will roll out a plan and a path to support groups. We've done that in small instances and doses, but we will continue to do that in 2021. You want me to answer those now, Dustin?
Yeah, you can go ahead and answer them now if you want.
Okay, so question is it possible to get leadership training, recruitment, retention, organizational, operational structure? It is possible. That's something that I pride myself in being an expert at. It's because I spent my entire life leading. Sounding without trying to sound arrogant, I've been recognized at every level of leadership for my role as being a good leader. So I could articulate organizationally how to be a better leader. Now, a lot of that applies to the military. A lot of it applies to business, but it's completely and utterly translatable to your life. I think it's important. One point for leadership training. Look, any kind of training that's going to help you build a better group is important to us. This is along the same lines in the first question about SOPs. We will be hosting webinars, seminars, workshops, and even the TED Talk survival / leadership version of offering that information. One really cool thing that Dustin had an idea of doing is turning American Contingency into a podcast. We're actually rated in the top 10 of all podcasts in government and organizations because of this and because of you. So go to American Contingency and subscribe on iTunes, on Spotify, and the list goes on to the podcast, because I will plan to continue to interview experts, subject matter experts in their expertise, extracting those kind of information and data that's going to benefit you, but also hosting deliberate courses that are going to make you better. There are a lot of people who are just plain pissed off. How are we to handle this within ourselves and subsequently among our members? Look, that is very important to talk about. I'm pissed off. I can't even look at the national media. I can't even look at Instagram. I can't scroll. I won't click because I'm so enraged at what's going on in our government. But here's what I want you to understand. And here's a great start point. How the United States government, by deliberate practice, is organized is very decentralized. Take cues from American Contingency. It's not an accident that we are operating this way. It's because the best version of America is the version of America that gives you the opportunity by establishing law, order, which is security, and then giving you constitutional rights. This Bill of Rights allows you to operate in opportunity and choice and do whatever you want to do to be successful. In addition to that, we operate in United States that are very decentralized from the U.S. government. As a proof of concept, let me explain how to foresee the future. Look at California right now. California as a government, as a society, is falling into the ocean, figuratively, which means they are falling apart at every level. Crime is up, poverty is up, homelessness is up. Everything negative is up, and everything positive is down. More people are migrating out of California than ever before, including the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, all these influential human beings who have claimed California as a home because of the governance and failure of that governance to decently, constitutionally govern their state. So the reason I bring that up is because that's what the future looks like for you in the wrong place. The federal government has stopped in many ways supporting what is California. So what is happening right now? You have a tyrannical governor who's deciding on his own accord to infringe on constitutional rights and just do whatever the hell he wants to do. He's a dictator. He should be in prison. But he's allowed to do what he's allowed to do, and he's only destroying his society for it. But guess what? There's a choice there. You could live in California, you could be subjugated to all of those things I just discussed, or you could leave. What I'm glad I did was move to Utah, because Utah, as far as I've seen, researched, and studied, is a great place for freedom. It's a great place that was established by the Mormon community because they were outcast, murdered, and oppressed. They built this state that is Utah and have created a wonderful place for freedom, for commerce, for constitutional rights, for BLM, not Black Lives, but Bureau of Land Management access. That's super important to me. So what I would tell you if you're getting enraged is relax. Because before that happens, your state or your community will shut down the access of federal governance. It happens all the time. The federal government comes in, thinks it's going to start kicking down doors. The sheriffs, thank God for sheriffs, stop them. I've heard the stories. I've seen it in practice. The governors of good states shut them down. I am not in fear of the federal government. That's not what I'm worried about. Now, I am worried about rogue actors in the federal government, but the federal government as a system, there is no deep state. It's super shallow. I've worked for the government for 20 years. I could tell you, like from proof of living it for the last couple decades, that there's nothing deep, there's nothing comprehensive, there's nothing even strategic about the broken systems that are the U.S. government. So, trust in yourself, your community, and establishing this group that is American Contingency in your own backyard. That's how you could change and affect what is your perception of things going on. You know why? Because that's tangible. It's not this philosophy or this thing, this emotional concept. It's something that you can actually affect. Start there. Question number 4 is, what is AmCon's path forward? Very good question. It's something that I deal with every single day, and I'm excited about what it's going to be in the near future. American Contingency is not just a social network of bringing people together. What you should understand about social networks is it's problematic. If you haven't seen it already, you probably have an example in your own family of the chaos that is human beings and their dysfunction. Everybody's got that uncle. Everybody's got that aunt. So when it comes to bringing people together via a common goal and objective, you're going to have stragglers. You're going to have trolls. You're going to have arguments, debates. You're going to have the whole slew of what is common in society. That's why the government itself is inherently flawed, because people are inherently flawed. What American Contingency is not just the social network, not just the education and content, but to me, it is a source for reliable and objective news and information that is going to help you navigate your world without the bias, political divisiveness that is causing you to be manipulated by the information you receive. Who would have thought that we'd be looking at social media like Facebook or Instagram for the news, for factual information? I mean, dude, mind blown. If you would have told me that the military would be looking at social media to extract intelligence that's going to drive operations, then I would have went, okay, yeah, that's probably something that we could potentially do. But if you told me that every human being on the planet is going to get their factual information that drives their lives and allows them to make decisions from a platform that is Facebook, I would have told you it's a joke. So now you have platforms that are, controlled by, in a lot of cases, Silicon Valley, which are typically left-leaning, who have biased in how they message, have biased in who they suppress and oppress from their platforms, which I just simply mean cancel, then that's a problem, because we're only getting one side of the story and likely an emotional spin on that story. I want to provide you with, here's what I want to be in a nutshell. I want to be a Blaze TV without the bullshit. I want to be a Blaze TV without the ads. I don't want to be fringe. I want to be the moderate that is going to come to you to give you that information to allow you to navigate the world. Because you should know if there's a riot. You should know if your governor has decided to shut down every small business in your backyard. You should know if there's a tornado about to rip through a storm cell, about to rip your backyard and house apart. That's important to know. But you have no source for that because corporations bought out all the national media, and now they control all the local media. That's from journalists that I know in our own backyard who have told me that. So the messaging is just a sound box for those corporate entities and their empowerment and their influence. Negative. We can't have that. So I'd like to be that objective voice box and news and information for force protection. I think it's important. We recently had outages with the 9/11 system. YouTube, Google, what communication systems will we fall back on should the internet go offline? Exactly why AmCon exists. The reason I want you to decentralize and have the conversations of what do we do when infrastructure goes down is because I don't want you to depend on American Contingency headquarters, on a national media resource that is an application, on the first responder in your own backyard. This idea that is American Contingency is the reliance on yourself, your family, and your community in your own backyard. Because guess what? The federal government isn't going to save you. They've showed a propensity to do the complete opposite. But you know who will save you? That small network of American Contingency members who have trained together, who have valued their relationships together, who have one common goal and objective, and it's to survive. It's to thrive in their situation because they're families. They eat together. They work together. They train together. They suffer together. You are going to fight with them together. You're not going to do that with anybody else. I'm not flying a little bird to your location and saving your ass. You have to do that for yourself. Good luck finding a little bird. Will AmCon HQ be providing any funding assistance support training for recognized affiliate groups? If so, what is the funding request process? The answer is yes. Yes, we will. What we will do is allow each groups, that's why we're giving time. Remember, look, I got it. Some groups like, Davenport's group, Nate's group, Northern Utah, the Phoenix group. I mean, there's groups that are freaking running with this, and I love to see that. I love to see decentralized groups standing up unilaterally. We will support you, but we need time to allow the other groups to catch up. What I don't want to do is come out of the woodwork and say I'm going to, like Northern Utah, I could support them right now. They're in our backyard. But I don't want to be, I favor Northern Utah anyway because they're in my state and they're good people. But I don't want to offer that training and not have a plan to offer other sites training. What we will do is once the groups, and this is guidance to the group leaders, once your group is stood up, once your group is vetted, once your group is solidified in your task organization, I will personally start chatting with group leaders via this mechanism, which is the Zoom or Skype mechanism, and we will line out your training plans for the year ahead based on a fiscal year. And then when you line out, when I have a warm and fuzzy that the leaders of the group are squared away and organized, and if there's anything that we could do to optimize that, we will do. I'm going to fly Dustin all over the United States. He doesn't know it yet, but he's going to go in and moderate these groups. Because if he goes in there and he gives best practices and he says, hey, this group is squared away, we will establish the funding process and fund your groups to train, including offering you at cost the equipment that we sell to help you be better prepared. If you're not doing a 501c4 anymore, political government control reasons, then what direction is AmCon going in regards to organization and funds management, actual as well as local level groups? Partially, I've already relayed that. What you have to understand is I know how to operate a business. So what that means is I understand how funds work. I also understand how allocation of resources and time and all these business processes work. So what you don't need to look at me and American Contingency as being is a nonprofit. Because when you do that, you think that the value you're getting should be free because you're buying into something. There should be a mutually reciprocating relationship here. Your money, which is $5 a month, is important to the overall funding of what we are doing. But it's not why we do what we do. In fact, I could fund American Contingency with Fieldcraft Survival, my company, solely by itself, which is a multi-million-dollar company and a very successful one. What I'm telling you is when I get the comments like, oh, I see Mike's, somebody said it the other day. They saw a picture of Mike Hernandez's Jeep and they said, glad to see American Contingency subscriptions are going to a good cause. Wow. Well, if you're that person, you just get blocked and deleted because I don't have time to get myself bogged down with trolls. So we won't entertain it. Look, I have a group of people that are working for American Contingency and nobody here is getting rich. So that's what you should know. You should also understand that I'm running a limited liability corporation that is American Contingency, which means it is for profit. Because the more profit we make, which is capitalism, the more that we can grow. So do I need to be transparent with what we're doing? Yes. Do you need to see my tax returns? No. No. You either trust that we're doing the right thing because that's what we're doing, but that's the convolution that is nonprofits. So what happens when a Wounded Warrior Project has corporate executives that are nonprofit that are getting paid six-figure salaries and driving Corvettes? Well, a Corvette's like a $60,000 car. I don't know if that's a big deal. But you see that and you go, oh, the perception. It's bad. It's bad optics. Well, what's the bad optic here? We're investing time, resources, and energy advocating for people and education. So I owe you to provide you value, and that's what I'll do. You owe us nothing. I don't even care if you don't pay $5 in subscription. I'm not asking you for anything. What I'm asking supporters of American Contingency is if you're a supporter, then be on board. If you're not, then you don't have to support us. I still want you to listen because I want you to be educated. So let's sort through that first. Because this idea that we are a nonprofit, it's not the case. Look, I believe in free market capitalism. I believe in the American dream. My mom lived it. I live it now after giving 20 years of my life to the country. Many people live that. And so with the right ethics, the right values, which we have, I hope and I strongly advise that you pay attention, that you believe in what we're doing at American Contingency. Nonprofits are messy. You don't want to do nonprofit. How to recruit locally.
That'll be answered in there.
Okay.
If you want to talk about that, because several people have asked.
Yes. How to recruit locally. So the recruiting process is a very you're talking about the R application for recruitment, right?
Yeah, or how a chapter would go about like reaching out to their local community to get new members to either join AmCon at the local level or, of course, on the locals page. Yeah,
that's a good question. So when you're recruiting locally to get members into your group, look, we don't have an apparatus to control nor manage nor care how you operate outside of American Contingency as we see it. Because we have locals as an application and we see things. So if you're doing things outside of that, that's on you. We ask that you follow the same guidance and values that we're instilling into the American Contingency, including the same messaging. But the reality is I just don't care what you guys are doing outside of that because I can't oversee it. So I want you to use best practices that we recommend, but I want you to be smart about it. Now, if you're going out and recruiting a person to be part of your local group and chapter, they should be a member of American Contingency because that allows you to interoperate, but it gives us eyes on who we need to support. So let me give you a very transparent example. Let's say you want to train your American Contingency group, and then on paper, which means on the application that is a locals, you have 5 members. Well, when we show up, you have 30 people show up that we train. Well, when we invest in going out to train you, and I know how much this costs, it costs thousands of dollars, we are investing in your group because you're helping us fund that capability. Like when I fly in a person like Kiowa, who's a former 5th group guy, who's a former, he's not a former Afghan. I was going to say former Afghan. He's Afghan. He's a former special operations guy. He is offering education and all this stuff. People love to give their time, but sometimes we got to pay for it. And so I paid his travel and I paid for his lodging. That's what we will do in those cases. So when you support us, that's where the money's going. So when we go to outreach to you and you haven't resourced those members and being a part of the organization, then it's just not it's not the best way to work. We want everybody who's part of American Contingency to be a member so they could be part of what we're doing. But again, that recruitment process starts with you decentralized. The first process of recruitment is assessment. It's assessing who's the right person for what we're doing, right? They have to share the same values. Are they able to pass an investigation, a background investigation? That's common to what you would see for a job application or a concealed carry. Are they somebody who provides value as an asset? Look, everybody can provide value. Even if you don't think you could provide value, more likely you could provide value in some way, at some level. So when you're recruiting guys coming in, have them fill out your application, have them come into the fold, and then be a part of the membership with the right understanding of what can lead to no longer accepting them as a member in leadership. In leadership, the hardest thing to do is create guidelines because not everybody's going to agree with your guidelines. When we put our guidelines out on American Contingency, everybody lost their mind because they're like, this is tyranny. Like, no, it's just us moderating a group of people who we don't know. So you're going to have to make tough decisions in what you establish, hopefully based on our principles and guidelines, as what you accept as behavior. And if people are acting out, you should have the ability to just say, hey, sorry, this isn't working. And that's okay. We block and delete people every single day. You know why? Because we don't have time to sit here and debate and argue with people who potentially just don't get it. If you're cussing at us, if you're rude, if you're obnoxious, if you're abusing verbally, physically, or any other way online, that's not going to work. And we're just going to get rid of you because that's just not the effort that we're into. The effort that we're into is moving forward. So that's important to outline. Assess, recruit, have a organizational means to take that information, to communicate, to find out more about their family. If I have a local American Contingency chapter, I want every single person in that group, I want to know their family. Because I'm not just depending on people to hang out over bowling, to hang out over a Stop the Bleed course. I want to know that these people who are potentially going to come and to the aid of me and my family as first responders are the right people. That is a very deliberate process. It typically starts with a questionnaire, an interview process, and then you get to know them. Probation is important. 30, 60, 90-day probation periods where you're getting to know them, where you're getting to know their family, their values, is very important to not create an unreasonable expectation. So if it's not working out, hey man, it's just not going to work out. You're in your probationary period. No harm, no foul. The next step for that is once they get through that process with you, vet them. Don't waste the resources, don't waste the time in vetting them after or before you've decided that they might be the right person. Vet them and then bring them into the fold in training, in local meets. I hope that makes sense. With your recommendation to interface with our local sheriff's department as a trusted entity, do you have a best practice for how to show them how we can assist, and gain their trust? Absolutely. Like I work with local sheriffs all the time. In fact, me and George at in Prescott, Arizona, we're in the process of joining the Jeep Posse. A lot of sheriff's departments that are either a legacy idea or maybe it's a progressive idea for them, have posses that they could deputize in an extremist or crisis management circumstance, natural disaster or even man-made disaster. They can call upon these people and they could rely on them having a standard operating procedure, having people who are vetted. In fact, American Contingency, as we organize it, is loosely based on that practice, which is the ability for a locally elected official who's in the business of force protection, deputizing American citizens to protect their backyard. That's what American Contingency is in a nutshell, and it fits this parameter perfectly. How you do it is you get involved with local search and rescue. Most local search and rescues are tied to the sheriff's department. Now, it could be in some small instances in towns and locations, or maybe even bigger cases, if you know the sheriff, and briefing the sheriff that local American contingency groups are there prepared to help you. The second phase of this and actually benefiting our own communities is this process. We haven't started it yet because we're waiting for the groups to get better organized, to get better trained, and then we will approach the sheriffs of those groups if the group hasn't approached them themselves. But we want to show the sheriff that we've done our checks and balances. Hey, all the members are vetted. All of them are trained in Stop the Bleed, and they have prerequisite lists. We're going to be, of note, we're going to be providing those lists of standard operating procedures that we have trained in together to allow us to be able to propose to the sheriff a standard operating procedure and offering reliable people that are reliably trained. That starts with a conversation. I mean, build that rapport now. If you're in a certain town, specifically, typically small rural towns, you could bridge that gap right now because you probably drink coffee with the sheriff. You probably drink beer with the sheriff. Well, maybe start entertaining that conversation. We will handle the deliberate approach, which is an organized approach, in the upcoming months. It will take months. How to recruit those who are on the fence, such as in our state, MA, people feel safe around here and are concerned about with our organization because stigma from the media. Look, the stigma from the media is so small. It's so niche. You know how you do it? Tell them to listen to the podcast. Tell them to watch our videos. Show them on your phone the videos. If it clicks in their head and they want to be part of it, let them know in your own messaging that there is nothing fringe here. What I have to do constantly, which is a part of my job, is the public relations aspect of American Contingency. I deal with it daily. I mean, daily. Let me give you a great example. On my personal YouTube, which is my personal YouTube, it has no affiliation. I put AmCon stuff on there, but I can do whatever the hell I want because it's my YouTube. I put a 1 minute and 26-second video of me drinking coffee. You know why? Because I thought it would be funny. My media guy said, wouldn't it be funny if you just sipped coffee and you didn't say anything? And you know what I got? I got a buddy of mine who sent me screen captures of all these messages from the Boogaloo Boys who thought it was a message to the masses to enact violence. Think about that let that sink in just for a second. I'm sipping coffee because I'm a funny dude. I think I'm a funny dude. Got a super dry sense of humor. And I get people who think, even in the conversation, somebody said, I hope he's not activating his militia right now because I'd hate to see people get hurt. What? A retired former Green Beret who has a business in preparedness, who talks about advocating for preparedness in people's lives and families' lives and communities and in this country, can't drink coffee and joke because that would be taken the wrong way. My simple solution to that is I just don't care. I just don't care. I don't have enough bandwidth to actually care about the misperceptions of what we're doing. What I do care about is the education, presenting the message in the right way. Find one instance of me saying, we're going to war. You know why I don't want us to go to war? Because I've actually been to war. I've been to war more times than I can count. I've killed more bad guys than I could remember. I know the worst sides of war. Yeah, it looks cool in Hollywood and sexy on Instagram, but it's not. War is chaos. War is tragedy. People die. People's lives and generation of those people's lives are affected forever. I don't want that. One, because I'm an American citizen who believes in the American dream. Two, I want freedom and peace because I know what war is. If they don't get it, they'll never get it. If we organized groups taking courses with soft instructors that are held for our members only, so it's our class, can AmCon HQ assist with the funding, such as contributing to the ammo cost or cost for medical supplies that will be used for the course? What's the process to request this funding or potentially assist with instructor fees? We covered it a little bit, but let me reiterate that it will take a while in the process. Give me till after the inauguration, which is late January, to roll that out. And I promise you in early February, we will have the plan to roll that plan out. What it's going to look like is a request for equipment, request for funding, with protocols in place, assurances in place to make sure it's a proper acquisition. So what we can help with will be limited in the actual equipment that we provide, but we will allow budgets to be allocated to certain groups to allow them to resource their own equipment. Meaning I'm not going to sit here and send out C-130s full of equipment to your locations to run your programs, but I will offer funding so that you could allocate your own resources. I will also allocate training instructors. If you haven't noticed already, like it began with the AmCon meets. I had a couple hundred people in the meets, the first few meets, until every governor shut every instance of us gathering down, where 3 different people and venues, after I had already traveled, canceled on us, like mid-air, canceled on us. So that's going to take some time. It's going to let COVID flesh itself out. What I want to see more of is the request for training via webinars, right? The key leader engagement meetings of groups and organizational leaders wanting to have a key leader engagement with me in headquarters. I want to see more of those requests, and we will meet those requests in the short term. For members you have that have more advanced skill sets, do you see utility in running cadre courses so the POIs are uniform for when you guys come out? Like the cadre can teach your Pistol 1 course so it complements your Pistol 2. Yes. I don't want you to uberly focus on technical skill sets that relate to tactics, because there's more than that. And I get you're asking the question specifically about that. But yes, our model for training is not going to be to train the masses. We have done that. We have offered bleeding trauma classes and stop the bleed, but they were principal training sessions, which means we can't train technical because we got 200 people in the room. So we could train an overview of principles. Now, my model for how we train from headquarters is train the trainer. We will come in and train you how to instruct your own. One of the things, Dustin, we need to add to that SOP list is how to effectively train. I'm doing that for my own company, but I'll do that for you guys as well, because there's a training process. If you understand how training works in the first place, how people learn in the first place, then you could be a more effective trainer, and we'll bring that to you. A fun question. Wow, thank God. My company members have requested this, so don't shoot the messenger. When can we expect dog tags and welcome packs? That's not very fun. So I am signing hundreds of welcome letters personally every single day. Did you get the new shipment of tags?
We did. We got them yesterday.
Yes. Yesterday, we just got the new shipment of tags. We got 2,000 tags in, which has a QR code, which is used for your security, because we could change it the day before or the minute before you arrive into town for the expo, for example. And so when you scan in, we'll be able to tell if it's the proper QR code. And please keep that QR code. It's been advertised a few times, but it also includes information on it. please keep that QR code to yourself. Keep that tag to yourself. Those welcome packets are being stuffed every single day by the hundreds by Dustin in the office. I will have one of my employees on the Fieldcraft side come and help Dustin today or tomorrow to make sure we get those out. That's welcome letter, that's tags, and that's sent to every single member that's vetted. How many vetted members do we have right now?
I think we're at around 7,000 was the last count, but the number ticks up every day.
Yeah, 7,000 plus members. That is a metric shit ton. Excuse my language. Pardon my French. Remember that we have a Q&A tab, a question and answer tab. The objective of these Q&A sessions is for you to ask the most frequently asked questions so we can answer them. So this is a fact check that will be archived for you guys to even go back to and reference, but to ask or to have the opportunity to give the ask. Give the ask? What? But please use the Q&A tab in the headquarters AmCon site. Look, I want you all to understand how important American Contingency is to me personally, which means I am putting out maximum effort. A lot of you guys and gals have supported us from the very beginning because you believe in that effort. I refuse to fail, and I will not let you down. What you don't see behind the scenes is the amount of stress, agony, and defeat most often that we face that is the headquarters of American Contingency. We've had every account deleted, blocked, and shut down for what? Being an American? Being a patriot, which you can't even use in search engine optimization because it's flagged as being an alt-right, racist, and lunatic? It's disheartening. So every single day we bust our butts to make sure that we give you 100% effort and we progress this organization into something positive. This is not a militia. I laugh because if you call this a militia, then you're actually insulting me as somebody who specializes in counterterrorism. I've operated with militias. I've operated against militias. This is not a militia. I think of Zintans in Libya who were experts at stealing cars because when Gaddafi was overthrew, they went in and hotwired and jacked every single car that was part of the U.S. government or part of the Libyan government and were jacking U.S. government vehicles as well. That's a militia that haphazardly shoot at anything they could see. That's not what we are. We are American citizens who believe in what America is and that refuse to let it be burned to the ground. We also refuse to allow ourselves to be victims of any circumstance because we're going to cut the umbilical cord and stop depending on institutions to save us because we understand the benefit of liberty as individuals to make our own decisions based on the rights that were fought for. How are we going to protect the localist groups from bad actors? You're not. That would be like asking me, how are you going to protect your teammates and your team guys from being killed in combat? Man, I wish I can go back and harvest all those experiences and change all the actions that led to those guys' deaths or injury. But you can't. Because the reality is we live in a world of bad actors. But here's what you can do proactively. Block, delete, ignore, suppress, and get rid of all those that are potentially bad actors and bad actors. Bad actors often want attention. It's the nature of that is human nature. Watch the movie Lord of the Flies and see what human beings are in their psychology. You're going to have people who want to destroy everything we represent because they don't understand. They're not educated enough. They don't have the patience. They just don't care. That's okay. You know what we do? We stop focusing attention on bad actors and instead focus attention on our preparedness, taking care of our families, taking care of ourselves, and building our communities. Any allocation of your resources, which includes time, that is spent wasted on these losers is too much time. It's time not well spent. Delete, block addresses 99% of these people. You want to be a bad actor and you want to step up, you'll F around and you'll find out. That should be the end-all, be-all solution. If you want to find out, you want to test the will, you want to test skill set, feel free. Most people don't want to find out. They just want to illustrate to the world how cool they are. Delete, block, ignore, and focus on what's right. And what's right is the path that you're on right now. Details on the spring event in Utah, we're planning it right now. It's going to be for all members who are vetted. If you come out here, you will be educated by subject matter experts, and you will walk away from an experience being physically social networked with a group of people that are the best people on the planet, the most resilient, the most self-reliant. That's more likely going to be in spring. We're looking at venues now. We're waiting on what's going to happen with the immunization and then the release of some of the restrictions that we're facing in Utah. I will respect the governor of Utah's order and law, and I'll respect law enforcement and not accumulate or assimilate a whole bunch of human beings on top of each other. But if it comes down to it, we will do it virtually or on a smaller scale. We're looking to go big, meaning 5,000 to 10,000 people over the course of 3 productive days with a social networking day. So stay tuned for more about that. Remember, we're sourcing more primary and assistant folks for developing materials for on-site distribution and content. We have a lot of people that are going to be resources that are helping you out. For example, I call them AmCon. Tom from AmCon is the subject matter expert in communications, did it for a living, is an expert. He is providing you the resources, which is up on our homepage for all things communications. Guess what? When all things fall apart in this infrastructure that we're looking at, that communication plan, which he has, that resource for information, which he is going to be a value add. Start tuning into that right now. Can we use the American Contingency logo on websites or local pages to promote American Contingency Group in our area? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. I trust you. We will moderate, we will look, we will curate the best that we can, and if there are issues, we will confront those groups or organizations that are out on the fringe, that are doing things that are unethical, that are not aligned with American Contingency. But yes, I encourage that. I want that. Great question. Last question. People who are signing up and not sure where to go after that, we need to direct them or notify people in the states that this person just signed up and is in your area. Can you articulate that for me, Justin or Dustin?
Yeah, so I think what they mean is like whenever somebody signs up for the Locals app, like we know that they've signed up, but they are not sure how to then connect with their local community. One of the things that we've seen people do is simply just say, "Hey, I'm from this area. You know, who's who in the zoo." So that's the recommendation that I have. I've seen it be pretty effective for people. Folks are honest and open if they want to be.
Yeah, here's the best way. I've been asked that question a lot. Like, hey, I'm in the Portland area. I want to connect with AmCon members. How do I do it? Well, you have to use the application. That's first and foremost. You have to start. Have they fixed the search queue, Curie?
I am not aware of any new changes to the app.
Okay, so the search Curie, is that how you say it? Is being optimized, and we're working with locals on fixing some things like searching for your group. What you can do is put a blast out on American Contingency if you are in a group and can't find your group. Remember, the thing about American Contingency is it's a social networking hub for everybody that is flocked to our group. So you're going to get inundated with traffic. Good luck with scrolling through everything that is American Contingency. The key is to locate your group yourself. But if you can't put out the help wanted ad that is a post on your page and ask for the help. Simply post, simply comment. That's the way that you're going to find your group. The difficult thing is right now we're working through a process to get groups validated. How many groups do we have that are vetted right now?
Vetted groups, I can't. Heather might have the answer to it, so Heather, feel free to chime in the chat. But for groups in general using the AmCon name, there's about 200 pages.
Yeah, so it's a lot.
Yeah,
which is a good thing. But we need to accumulate that in a organizational path that's going to allow you to either search queue it or go to a tab and hit it. Those are the user interface things that we're working with the guys and gals from Locals right now. Worst case scenario, you've gone through all those. Is there an email the worst case scenario is the post, but I mean, if you are just out there lost in the sauce, then you guys can go to, what's the best resource for that, Dustin? I don't want to put out bad info.
I mean, send them to the AmericanContingency.locals.com. I know people are concerned about it being a spam post, but if you're reaching out to the community, that's not a spam post that we're going to delete. The things that are considered spam is if it's just BS YouTube videos or random pictures with zero context or information or explanation. If people are trying to connect, we're human beings. We're going to recognize that and not try and stifle that communication.
Yeah, if you got a picture of your girlfriend in a bikini in the back of your K5 Blazer, that's just not going to fly. I'm a big fan of K5 Blazers, but that kind of stuff has been something that we've been constantly have to moderate. We will go through the processes of like, hey, we'll go through some due diligence here, but again, we don't have time for a lot of moderation of that kind of stuff. Guys, I want to close this out with leaving you on a positive note. American Contingency is a threat to a lot of these organizations and people who are influencers for the left fringe. Even the right has come out against me in some ways because they don't think I'm fringe enough. Well, I don't care. But I also know in the realm of doing something that's the right, you're often ridiculed. You're often suppressed. You're often tried to get canceled. That is just an indication that we're doing the right thing. What I will do is I will insulate us by ensuring that our cache of content and information, our communications with each other are protected in the cache that is Locals. And I will bust my ass with my team every single day to ensure we're providing you value that is everything American Contingency. The intel, news, and information. The content that provides you perspective. The education that makes you better at preparedness. The social network that makes you a contingent for your own community. Those things we will bring you and continue to bring you into 2021. With all the negativity in the world, that is the news, that is social media, there are a lot of things that are changing in our society. Let it change. Let the things outside of our control change. What you can change yourself is your mindset, your perspective, your level of preparedness in yourself, in your family, and in your communities. Things like setting up yourself for insurance, like we partnered with all these good people like USCCA partners. That is because we believe in making sure that you're squared away. I've harvested a lot of content for Fieldcraft Survival. Why? Because there's a lot of beneficial information that's coming out of Fieldcraft that will benefit you. There's a lot of crossover that you're going to see. All these things that we're bringing are because we believe in the mission. Thank you so much for believing in us, and we hope that Q&A session has helped you. We're going to do another one at 1300, right?
Yep.
We're doing another one at 1300, and I hope you continue to advocate for AmCon in your own messaging and your own groups, and you go into this life, into your day in this life, energized that there are people just like you who believe in the American dream. We won't stop. We won't be shut down. We'll just circumnavigate, we'll flank and maneuver, and we'll never, ever fold. Thank you so much, guys. Hey, what's going on, American Contingency? Round 2 of Q&A. Today, we're talking about all of your frequently asked questions, your facts. What I encourage you guys to do, if you haven't done it already, is to make sure you use the Q&A tab anytime you have a question, because your questions and concerns are headquarters questions and concerns. This is something that we're going to do more frequently on a set schedule, and making sure that you have no questions that are unanswered, because a lot of that time leads to anxiousness and unknown assumptions, which doesn't take you down a good road and path. We want to clear that up for you. So today we're answering your questions one by one. Dustin, for me, has a roll-up of questions that you have asked in recent, I guess, the last couple hours, right, Dustin?
Yeah, it was when they registered for the event.
Okay. Let's do this. All right, let's do the questions that I have in front of me, because we did do the top questions, which are the top 5 most frequently asked questions that we addressed in the last video. I encourage you, because we are doing this live, to go back and reference that to make sure that your question might have been answered on that end. Or you could ask it right now if you're live, and we'll continue to get through as many as we can within this hour. So here we go. Does AmCon plan to provide a list of preparedness core competencies that members should strive to achieve? Very good question. So let's lay that out for a bit. Let's talk about core competencies in survival and preparedness. I was in this dilemma, this conundrum of, do I intersect Fieldcraft Survival, which is a for-profit company that's a very successful company that I run with 30 plus employees? Do I intersect that with what American Contingency is? And I think I'm done trying to figure that out, because I've decided as of a couple weeks ago to make American Contingency a limited liability corporation. All we're doing in American Contingency is taking membership fees and rolling it back into providing more growth for you and for American Contingency. That's typically what business should be doing in the first place. A lot of people don't understand business, and let me digress for a second. Half of my employees make more than me than I get paid myself for my own company at Fieldcraft Survival. So the first question is obviously why? Well, if you run a business, which becomes your lifeline, you have a lot of write-offs in your expenses. Let's not pretend you don't. So I don't pay for gas, because every time I go to work, I'm using a company vehicle and I'm writing off as an expense. A lot of my employees don't have that luxury. For me, that's a luxury. I also believe in entrepreneurship, you have to be willing to sacrifice. So I have always been transparent about my salary, because I don't want people in my company to get this idea or an assumption that somehow I'm just feeding my family and growing more wealthy while the company grows more wealthy and they stay the same. All of my employees that work for me, I try to incentivize them in other means besides pay, but progressively, pay is important because it means security. I want to put more money back into my company so we can grow larger to support the entity, which is Fieldcraft Survival in this case, which supports, in effect, all of my employees and their families. And I take that very serious as a role. I get paid $50,000 a year. Last year, I made $17,000 from Fieldcraft Survival, even though we had a great year. We are up 466%, and I've given myself a pay wage via W-2 of $50,000. And the reason that I'm explaining that to you is because you should understand that the decision to move to limited liability is one for legal reasons, but also ethical reasons. I am not one to think about getting richer via the mechanism that is American Contingency. For one, it could be self-funded by myself via my company, Fieldcraft Survival. We raise a lot of money. We do a lot of things behind the scenes to help people out that we don't advertise because, to be honest, it's nobody's business. But my idea of business is to do good in the world, not to get richer in the world. Security, yeah, sure, fine. Getting a stable, efficient, or sufficient paycheck, yeah, sure, that's part of it. But again, I'm not driven by money. I never have and never will be. I've seen it destroy people's lives, and I won't stand for it. So when it comes to core competencies, Fieldcraft Survival has outlined a plan for what's called the pillars of preparedness. And let me quickly go through this. The first core competency is yourself. That's the first point of focus. If you're not healthy, if you're not well, then you're not capable. You're going to diminish your return. You're not going to be prepared to fend for yourself nor your family if you're not taking care of you first and foremost. It's like that the airplane guidance for putting on an oxygen mask in the event of emergency, where it drops down in front and you're supposed to put it on yourself before you put it on your child. Because the idea is it does you no good to try to put it on your child and then you pass out and now your child is helpless. So in order to start in the realm of preparedness, you as an individual need to be prepared. That starts with health and wellness, taking care of your sleep. Gary Vee put out that if you're getting more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep, then you're wrong. Well, guess what? That's probably the worst business practice in the history of business, because you are diminishing your capabilities by not getting enough sleep. Even worse off, you're diminishing your capabilities that are endangering other people around you, including not growing your business because you're making bad decisions. Worst case, you're killing people on the road because you're falling asleep. 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That's a metric that I follow. We used to call it the solid 7 when I was in the military, because if you get solid 7 hours, you are more cognitive, you are technically more proficient, and tactically more proficient. So 7 hours is the goal. That's the objective. You also want to take care of yourself and eat well, whole foods. And I know I'm talking, I might be preaching to the choir here, but a lot of people don't have a grasp of this kind of simplified answer and how you should line it out. So I am doing that because it starts with the basics. We're not talking gunfighter pistol here. We're not talking vehicle dynamics. We're talking about eating well, eating whole foods, a balanced diet, and keeping refined sugars out of your diet completely. The good thing about fructose is, you could eat it and you'll feel full. You do that with any kind of substitute synthetic sugar and you never get full. In fact, you crave more. That's why it's, to me, an epidemic. It causes cancer, cardiovascular disease, which is, by the way, the leading cause of death. So health and wellness is the primary means to start. Physical fitness. Genetics plays the biggest role in physical fitness, actually, if you actually look at the science of it. But if you have a routine that lends itself in health and wellness and fitness, then you're going to become better. So I worked out for ever since I was 17, 16 years old, even when I played football, every single day for every job and every role, because it was part of my life. So fitness doesn't just need to be a hobby, it needs to be a component of your life. Now for me, I don't go to the gym and do back and buys, chest and tries. I don't do WODs. I don't do any of that stuff. What I do is I live an active lifestyle. I fast every day for 16 hours every single day, which means eating typically stop eating by 7 or 8 o'clock. And then I wake up the next morning, I don't eat, I drink coffee, which actually can be converted into glycogen as well. And then I have a lot of energy, and then I lead up to lunch, and then I'll eat lunch. So again, taking care of yourself, that's the start point. The other mechanism of taking care of yourself and preparedness is being prepared in how you present your everyday carry. When I say EDC, I don't just mean guns. I mean everything that you make a part of your life that benefits your person to protect yourself in accidents, right? In self-defense, in optimized living. Like I usually wear an Aura ring. that tracks my heart rate, that tracks my kind of life cycle because I like looking at data. I also sleep with that ring because it tells me if I'm getting enough sleep. And then I know if I need to compensate, maybe more caffeine intake, maybe a cat nap or whatever it is based on those analytics. That's what kind of down and dirty detail that I'm talking about, how I look at this big picture. EDC carry considerations are a must. If you are a law-abiding citizen in the United States of America and you are not carrying a pistol on your person, which means in your bag, in your waistband, somewhere where you have ready access, you're wrong. Carry a pistol that suits you. You know, most people come up to me and they go, hey, Mike, what kind of pistol you recommend for me to use for everyday carry? And I say, let me see the size of your hands, because a lot of it has to do with your ability to manage muzzle flip and recoil. The universal answer to that is a Glock 19 single action only semi-automatic pistol, because it's very easy to use, it's reliable, and it's been proven in combat over time. Glock 19, holster, appendix carry, and have carrying configurations that are going to assist you in carrying in different environments. Look, if you wear board shorts in the middle of summer, then you're likely not going to carry a Glock 17 in your appendix carry in your waistband. But you can carry a fly fishing bag, a merce, a purse, a European man satchel, whatever you're into. But you need to carry. I have an HKP7 inside that Patagonia bag within arm's reach where I know exactly where it is. The reason I carry an HKP7 in this configuration is because I can carry it in that bag with no Kydex holster retained in it. That's because the P7 has a grip safety, which the trigger can be manipulated right now in the bag of me bouncing it around, but will not fire unless I grip the safety mechanism, which is in the frame of the gun, and then squeeze the trigger, which happens for me in an instance when I grab or acquire the gun in the first place. I like that configuration. It's not a big round mag capacity. It's right now I have 8 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. But knowing what I have, training on that capability, and carrying that as a constant standard operating procedure of your life is important. I also recommend that everybody carry a tourniquet on your person, meaning on you. Look, if the likelihood of you being a victim of a gunshot wound is very rare, but the likelihood of you being involved in an accident is not rare. 400 rednecks fall out of tree stands every single year and get injured. I know because I've fell out of a tree stand before. Also, a lot of people get injured in vehicle accidents. Hundreds of thousands of people, actually. 30 to 40,000 human beings in America get killed in motor vehicle accidents. I often ask myself, what could have been done to prevent those deaths? And typically it has to do with stopping severe bleeding and severe trauma. So a tourniquet is a way you do that. We educate you on that on Fieldcraft Survival and American Contingency. We've held entire workshops where we teach hundreds of people how to apply a tourniquet in principle. Carry a tourniquet. Also, carry a flashlight. A light external to your gun for utility, which increases your chance of survivability as a person, is only making you better. I carry a multitude of things, including a Mylar space blanket, on and on and on. The next pillar is mobility. Your extension of your rucksack, meaning your individual capability, is your vehicle. I look at my vehicle as a tool. That utility is often referred to the capacity and capability that I'm able to get off-road and what I'm able to carry. For example, if you have a full-size or mid-size, even SUV, you have about 1,500 pounds on average of load capacity. So your body, your passenger's body, your family's bodies all lend themselves to the subtraction of that capability. Steel bumpers, rooftop tents, all this stuff adds up, and you diminish your capability. That's something you have to pay attention to. But all the empty space in your vehicle, which is, by the way, the one means or the primary means that you travel to go to and from work, but also bug out from a bad situation into a better one, all the empty space that you have in your vehicle is a no-go. If you carry a tourniquet on your person, you should be carrying a first aid kit in your vehicle. If you have a first aid kit in your vehicle, you should have a triage hospital inside your house. This is all looking at capacity, which is just space, and upgrading your circumstance. That's how I look at it. Increasing the capability by increasing the equipment and often increasing the training regime. So if you have a loadout bag in your vehicle, Fieldcraft Survival, we sell 80 liter, 40 liter, and 20 liter loadout bags. You should have those things loaded with all life-saving essential pieces of equipment. Exposure, that will kill you first in survival. That's often most referred to as the number one killer of human beings in austere environments. It's because our physical bodies are very bad. I mean, we're very good at regulating that 98.6 degrees. We do it often. In fact, the majority of calories you burn every single day are spent regulating your core body temperature. Fun fact, if you're out in the cold, like it is right now in the wintertime, you're using an excess of calories. The determination sub-freezing is around 6,000 calories that's required to sustain body weight and composition. So you think about that. 6,000 calories of just sitting on your ass is what you need. You need even more if you're active. So it's not very difficult to see how quickly you can become a victim of cold weather, whether that's starvation or exposure to the elements. Here's another fun fact. You're bleeding in a cold environment, you need an outside source to retain your body heat. Because once you go hypothermic, your body core temperature cannot be regulated by your systems anymore. So you need a Mylar space blanket. You need the ability to make a fire. And you need redundant contingency plans in place in order to get that done. Because you're bound to pull out that big lighter at 10,000 feet off a trail that you just went down in your overland rig in the middle of a blizzard, and it's not going to work. So what's your backup? Do you have tinder, flint? Do you have wood even carried dry in your vehicle? You might want to start thinking about that. Again, look at your vehicle. It could be a Honda Civic front-wheel drive. If you have that and you have a trunk, then you have plenty of capability to put in life-saving equipment. I just did a video yesterday for Fieldcraft for YouTube about the way that you should pre-stage your medical equipment in your rig. You should have all your med gear readily accessible like you do your self-defense gear. It does you no good if your truck gun's in your truck and then you're getting assaulted and mugged and have to defend your life outside of your truck. So have it on your person, but also upgrade it in your vehicle. The last component of the tangible path to preparedness is let's call it, for you guys, let's call it safe house, which is simply looking at your house and your home as a way to sustain survivability. So when I look at people's houses, they're not often set up for long-term shelter because you might live in an urban environment. So you don't think about sustaining food and water. You don't capture rain. You don't think about these things, but all you have to do in order to think about filling the gap in capability is ask yourself the question, what would happen right now if I lost power? When I was in Durango, Colorado, when I lost my heating source, which was central heat in my house, it was 17 degrees in my home one night. And what did I do? I made a fire and I slept by the fire and I felt like I was on the frontier in the pioneering days. But rapidly, I was exposed to that world in one infrastructure breakdown. So what happens if your electricity goes out? In Prescott, Arizona, if my electricity went out, I lost all power, meaning I lost all heat, and then I had a backup generator to fill the gap. While the rest of the neighborhood was in the dark, in the cold, I was living large, taking showers, eating food, doing whatever I had to do. Often when we lose electricity, we lose the ability to communicate because we're typically tied to the Wi-Fi connection via our server inside of our house or our modem inside of our house because your phone's very good at tethering to increase its capability. So if you lose power, you might lose the ability to text or be mobile. What are you going to do to communicate? Well, you might want to think about a comms plan. AmCon, good old Tom, teaches ham radio, which is a very efficient means of communication when the grid collapses. What is your contingency plan? What is your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plan for communications? You have to map that out. Long-term survival and food and water. How much food? You can never carry enough. When somebody says, hey, Mike, what do you recommend for food storage? Well, how big is your house? How big is your closet? How much money can you afford to invest in your food storage capability? If the answer is a lot of space, a lot of room, and a lot of money, then there is no answer. You keep loading out food until you fill up the capacity because you can never have enough. Security, which I talked about in the last SOP conversation, is the number one principle of patrolling, and I think the number one principle in life, which is active conscious security means you're consciously involved in gathering the information around you to make better decisions for you. So, is your house secure? Do you have a fence around your house? Is the fence got a gate? Is that gate locked? Are you on a main road? Could you be a victim of a drive-by? Are you in a city? Are you in a town? What are you going to do to defend your house and home if you're surrounded? I mean, just watch, what's that show? What's the zombie show?
The Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. They have an acronym for it, right? TWD.
Yeah.
Watch TWD and you get a lot of good ideas where I'm like, dude, why didn't they think to do that? Like a prison? I mean, that's a horrible place to base. There's a whole bunch of things you could do, but remember, the house and the home is going to be the most likely place that you're going to bed down and defend. Can you defend it? Are you willing? Are you able? Are you capable? And then how are you going to do that? How are you going to sustain survivability over the long term? I love generators. I love backups. I love contingencies, if you couldn't tell already. All right, next question. Will there be super regional leadership? In Wisconsin, we have an elected state board of leaders and area groups, but will states have a regional leader or board to keep contact with Alpha Charlie 1? Yes. We've talked about that in the organization of how things unfold regionally, and there will be state leadership and regional leadership. And that leadership will be the go-to for me to communicate to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music. That's important because that's a great way to disseminate information, upstream and downstream. So what we'll be doing is, again, we're trying to give a 6-month timeline, which will be there February, March, of giving people the opportunity to stand up groups all over America, 200 plus groups. Once we have the groups established, we will go in. Dustin starts his audit in January, and we'll continue to go group by group and establish the task organization that is going to lead to success. That's a very good question, and that is something that we're going to do. AmCon meetups with Mike. It's happening. Along those same lines of that same line of questioning, we will have the meetups. I planned 3 different meetups in 3 different places after Montana, where I got COVID. But I got shut down. They canceled on me en route to these places. So when that happened, I realized, how can we put out the information? Yes, I want to get in person, but how can we put out the information? We got to go more virtual. That's more effective too for people's schedules. But we will do AmCon meetups and training, political and COVID pending. We'll get out there and hit the streets. That's my favorite part of what American Contingency is as well. Headquarters role. So headquarters role is 4 people right now. It's actually 2 people in the physical space. Heather is decentralized. She's operating out of the West Coast. But on the ground here, there's 2 people, excluding myself. I run as the CEO of a company with, I think we have over 40 plus employees, mostly subcontracted, but 40 plus employees. I run that company every single day. And I put in 16 hours a day until the time I wake up, until the time I eventually go to bed, whenever that is. I'm committed to not only leading that company, but also running that company. All the time that I've given American Contingency has technically been on my own time. There is no crossover for AmCon and Philcraft in structure nor funding. So I am trying my best to ensure that the guys here are set up for success. Some of the things that we looked at are, hey, maybe we create a task organization here to scale, to grow. And leading into the next question is how that's going to grow. Look, we're going to be the Blaze TV that doesn't suck. I'm not a big fan of Blaze TV, but I feel like Glenn Beck had a great plan when he started out. He was kind of disaffected from Fox News and media. He realized that he had his own following and own culture. He took that, but I can't even make it through an episode of anything Blaze TV related because of the ads. No offense to them, it's just the model in which they operate. So I want to be able to disseminate information, but not on the fringe of anything. I want to send you objective media and news that is going to give you a better picture of the world around you. So I'm not inundated. Look, there is no strategy to monetize your attention. It's there or it's not. That's why I like the subscription model. Because if you say, I don't like anything you're doing, well, then here's your $5 back and have a good day. Like, that's the great thing about a free market capitalist. You don't have to be invested in what we're doing because if you don't like the coffee, pour it down the drain and move on to your next option. So when I look at how we move forward and how we scale, we have to scale in improving people's lives via this thing that is making people better prepared. I feel in a way that we are really building confidence for Americans who are lost right now. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. What I mean is when people started hitting me up on the Philcraft side, asking me for advice, I realized there's a lot of gaps in information. There's a lot of things people don't understand, and there's a lot of people who want to be better prepared but don't know how to get into it. So a former CIA guy, former Green Beret, stands up American Contingency, and instantly we're a militia. Wow. I mean, I take that as an insult. I mean, if I'm going to stand up anything, it's going to be a tier 1 element. It's not going to be a militia. We're not going to be the Taliban. We're going to be freaking SEAL Team 6 of the militias. So everything that we've done in messaging and how we've delivered it has been consistently about helping people, American citizens first. Because if I help you, help yourself, your family, and your community, overall, we'll be better off for it. And that's what I want. That's the purpose behind American Contingency. In the scale of the business progressive nature of how businesses scale, we have to look at like, hey, what are we making? How are we influencing? What are we marketing? And then how do we grow? There's a whole bunch of questions there. The application, I have an interview this Friday with a guy who is going to build our app and also host and manage our network. Security infrastructure is the first thing that we have to set in place. We did that first and foremost with locals. The reason we're on this platform is because we've been banned and canceled everywhere else. So we're now on a fire base. Now it's like, how do we insulate our security to make sure we can conduct operations? Well, we do that when we create an actual network that's protected. So your information, so our content, so our dissemination of information is protected. And Locals has started that for us. We will not migrate you to an application. If you are a subscribed, which means paid, vetted member, you will get access to the application. When you're on the application, you'll have one consolidation point for content, education, scheduling, and also intel and information. That's the most important apparatus to me because I want you to be informed because the biased media is not informing you. They're telling you all the things they want to change your behavior in and influence your minds in or take away, but they're not giving you objective information that's going to help you save your life or improve your quality of life. They didn't tell the guy in Provo that there was a protest that was marching down the street, the main street of Provo, and that he was going to get shot in the chest for just driving through trying to get to work. They didn't tell him that. So we need to be able to communicate this because our entire media system has been compromised. I'll say that again. Our entire media system has been compromised. There is not one media outlet, for the exception of very few, on a national scale that have not been compromised by big multi-billion-dollar corporations, typically overseas, that are influencing everything that you're getting, down to the production, down to the talking bobblehead that's communicating to you through a teleprompter. So we need to fix it. Excuse me, Diet Coke. How to recruit locally. Recruiting locally is a very good question. When we recruit in special operations, the first thing that we look at is who do we want to recruit and for why? We want good Americans who have good values because we want assets in American Contingency. Now, if you don't think you're an asset, you are one. Anybody on this planet is potentially an asset. If you're an American, even more so. So don't just think technical skill sets. Like, I don't shoot, I can't move, I don't really communicate well. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the skills you bring to bear to sustain survivability. Can you jar? Can you shoot a bow? Are you a good speaker? Are you a good writer? You bring something to the table. I encourage the organizations that are standing up to follow a format similar to the military. We use shops, S1, admin, S2, intel, S3, ops. We do these things because it organizes the specific elements to focus on their goals via their task every single day, and then bring them together in the conduct of whatever it may be. Culmination, training, operations. And so when they work together, but they can also decentralize within their organization, they can get work done. So I want you to first assess the people that you want in your group. This might be a passive conversation. This might be like some groups who have made business cards that are American Contingency. I give you free and utter flexibility to use our logos, to use AmCon as a name, in the name of good, which is all things preparedness and all things American Contingency. When you go out and you assess, it's a conversation. When you've assessed that you have the right person, there needs to be a deliberate process to bring them into the fold, have a formal interview, have a formal written application, and then look at them to be involved more in events that are going on. I told the last group in the questioning, and I still recommend this, only a couple hours old, that you don't vet a member unless you've decided you want to keep them in a member. That should be the last step in a process after getting to know them. If you know them, yeah, that process speeds up. I mean, there's people that we know because we work with them, because they're friends, they're family, and that speeds and accelerates the process. But once you get through knowing who they are at the root of who they are, who's their family, who's their friends, where do they work, and they're open to that access to that information because they want to be part of a team. Look, a lot of guys are not going to be on board that wagon, but understand in the pillars of preparedness, as I lined it out, the foundation of survival throughout history has been social networks. It's been proven. The longest ongoing psychological study of human beings done by one of the biggest organizations in psychology in the world have determined that your social network and the relationships that you hold is the most important factor to happiness and longevity, meaning your life. So you need to have a social network. You need to know who the people's family and friends are. You need to get to know them. And then when you've assessed they bring value to the group, you need to have a formal process in going through a background investigation via American Contingency, which is on the main page in a link, which allows us to give you that thumbs up that they have been vetted, and then proceed with adding them to your group in a probationary period. You assess, you select, and then you train. When you're in the fold, you're training, but you're still on probation. 30, 60, 90 days is the minimum recommendation. depending on who it is, depending on how many training or people interactions you have. Once you've assessed that they interoperate well with others, they bring value add, they're not a liability, then we make them an official member. And that's what we're doing right now in vetting people, is making them more official. What we like to do is in January, sending Dustin all over the United States, we are not auditing groups. We're consulting with groups. Once we've consulted with your group and we give you the thumbs up, the stamp approved, then we start flowing in money to logistically support you. Then we start hosting training venues. Then we start going around the United States and bringing these groups together. So when we have an expo, we say, hey, we're putting an invite to the groups, decentralizing the communication to leaders, and then focused on disseminating those video teleconferences via that apparatus. That is the best, most organized way to conduct business and to make sure that we're super efficient and speaking the same language. So important. After you've brought them into the fold and we've approved the groups, all the members of that group and how you sustain that relationship are up to you. People are going to fall out. That's the nature of things. I've had team sergeants in my company who fired everybody on their team. I've only fired one dude in my entire career, and it was because he never got along. If you don't get along with the masses, which I think is important in understanding culture, then you're a liability to the potential survivability. But that's okay. We're all driven by different incentives, passions, purposes in life. And so if they don't want to be a member, it's as simple as, that's why I don't want you to over-obligate people in some formal fashion. Like, you don't need to have a legal contingency lined out in a contract in order to have them be a member. It could be a sworn-in oath. It could be a promise of solidarity and purpose to the cause. Whatever that may be and whatever that looks like, we want to be able to informally allow them just to be who they are. Like, if you don't want to be a member of American Contingency, like many people have said, I don't want to pay the $5. Well, then don't pay the $5. Well, what happens then? Then you're just on the unpaid side where you don't get as much information or premier access, because we want to incentivize people to be paid because it's $5. You probably spent that getting your protein bar and Monster this morning at the gas station. We're not asking for a lot here. So the collective is the important metric, which is if people believe in the mission, we provide value, then we could bring everybody together in that belief. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. So there is no pitch, there's no sell. If you don't want to be part of it, simply step away. That's completely fine. Remember, the Q&A tab is available for all of you guys. That's ready right now. Just go to the Q&A tab, ask your questions, or ask them live right now. If we don't get to your question today, we will make sure we collect those questions and answer them at a later time. Last question? Is that the last question?
No.
Oh, no, I got some time.
Not the last question.
Yeah,
We've got 18 minutes.
18 minutes. Yep. We still got some time. Sorry, guys. Do you see our AmCon mission changing or evolving due to the changes we will likely see based on the new political landscape? Very good question. I'll ask that out loud again. Do you see AmCon mission changing or evolving due to the changes we will likely see based on the new political landscape? Let me frame this very carefully, because I don't want this to be used against me, because I don't want to drive people who are biased in the wrong direction. So I'll word it carefully. We will evolve. We are likely to change our mission in some way as it's presented based on the political situation on the ground. What does that mean? That doesn't necessarily mean that I mean you're going to war, because I don't even think we'll ever see a civil war, because I know how the government and I know how Americans live and operate. When you wake up this morning, when you woke up this morning and you were in your neighborhood, in your home, did you have a feeling of chaos, calamity, and all the things bad happening in the world? More likely not. When I woke up this morning, there was snow on the ground, it was beautiful, crisp air, and I walked out to my vehicle with my EDC, and I was thinking about the day ahead of me. If you spent all night on Facebook and you woke up checking your Instagram, you are likely scrolling things that drive your emotion, that optimizes more money for big tech and less understanding for society. I'm outlining that because we will likely wake up and there will be chaos somewhere in the world. But will it directly affect us all simultaneously? The answer is no. The federal government, which is, by the way, decentralized on purpose, separated from we the people, sometimes and often forgets that the government is the people. The power in America is the people, we, us. We are the strength and the power behind America. Not a politician who spent 47 years in politics, not a former billionaire businessman who did 4-year run at it. What's powerful about America is who we are as individuals, because we're given a frame, a structure that is the Constitution, that is the Bill of Rights, that is the governance as the founding fathers sought this American experience and experiment. And that's what makes us great. So the balance of those powers are that we retain the upper hand, which we do, not only in numbers, but collectively our capabilities. I've worked for the federal government my entire life, and the most inefficient institution by far in the world is governments, including the American government. Are we perfect? No, but we have a pretty good solution. So now the often question to me, and maybe highlighted in this question that was asked, are we going to war? Not likely. Because you're likely to wake up in your neighborhood, in your city or town that's so far decentralized from the federal government that your sheriff, your mayor, and maybe even your governor would say, nah, we're not doing that. A good indication of this is what happened in California after the assault weapons ban, or even after recent litigation of threats of taking away guns and taking away guns in California. Where I lived in Amador County in a place called Jackson in Ione, California, which is an old gold rush town. It's a super cool town. The sheriff said, go pound sand. I'm not enforcing any laws. So that means you're not going to be infringed in your own county, in your own city and town. But that doesn't mean you're insulated. That means if you go outside of that, you're subjugated to the federal laws that you're surrounded by, in this case, the state laws. So we will evolve, and then we will adapt. We're already doing it. What you haven't realized from the headquarters perspective is all the things we've had to do to be here right now, even communicating to you on this microphone. We got banned and deleted on every account, including Discord, which is ironic because Discord actually means Discord, but they deleted our account. Every single message from the left has been radical against us. And we're not radical. I sure as hell am not radical. Maybe I'm abrasive. Maybe I offend people because I'm too direct. Maybe I'm too much of a man. But I've never been called a terrorist in my life until recently. I've never been called a white supremacist, which is impossible. But I've been called a white supremacist. I'm alt-right now. I don't even know how that could be possible, but that's what I am. So we are going to continue to be faced with challenges, and as they come, we will adapt. The best case scenario for us right now is we continue to organize, we continue to have contingencies in our own communities, and if things hit the fan, we're prepared. It's as simple as that. This network that we're developing is known as an auxiliary network. Now, you could Google auxiliary, and you could Google unconventional warfare, and then you can go down the rabbit hole. Because you're like, Mike is a deep state actor. He works at the CIA. He's a special operations goon, whatever you want to think. What I'm building is the contingent to address the worst case scenario. The benefit of that is we will cover down on everything in between. The government decides to chaotically disrupt American lives and they go in completely berserk, the balance of powers is we the people. And we need a contingent. Am I saying that we need to go to war? No, because proactively we would never do that. You know why? Because we're smarter than that. We're more tactful for that. But being prepared, having decentralized organizations, doing the things that we do right now, not only address the worst case, but everything in between. Guess what happens when you have a natural disaster in your backyard tomorrow? Guess what happens when you've accumulated a group of good human beings who are willing to take care of each other in the absence of governance and institutions doing it for you? You know what you have? You have what America should have been and was. Us taking care of each other. Oh yeah, a tornado just ripped through and destroyed our community. Well, guess what? AmCon, activate. We're going to go in our backyards. It's already happening. It's already happening in backyards of middle America all over the United States where AmCon groups are standing up and taking care of their own in the absence of waiting for institutions to do it for us. That is what I think Americans should be doing in the first place. But since there is a big gap in what I think and want and what is, we will facilitate every means necessary to stand Americans up back on their feet. Would AmCon HQ facilitate a letter and call campaign? Locally, we are planning a letter and call campaign to make our voice heard, which seems to be what's missing. We don't speak up enough. We've let the left squeak and get the grease. It's not sexy, but I think it needs to be up there in health and wellness and personal security. We would like to hear that come from HQ. A coordinated letter and call campaign letting our electors know who we are. Man, I think that's a really good idea. I'll tell you what, one of the guys, Dustin, that works for me, comes from that field of expertise. That's something that we will look at in the near future and start with campaigning to sheriffs. I think that's a good start point. That's for me, the 25-meter target. I think that's what we should focus on, which are politically elected officials who are embedded in our communities. And then it should be something that we do. Look, you can't, and this goes back to the last question of evolving as American Contingency. What do I want us to be? I mean, ideally, in years, via the passion that we have, via the right messaging as moderates might be the wrong word, but somewhere between left and right, where we hardworking Americans that just want to take care of their families, live in freedom, and go hunting, go fishing, and live the American dream. Whatever that is, and name, is the lifestyle that we're advocating for and what we recommend and what we promote. That could be a politically, a political party. The likelihood of that is slim. People have tried to do it before, but never say never. Where it starts is what you're calling on. And I think it's important because a lot of people talk about making change. Oh, we're going to go out there and hit the streets. So if you're going to hit the streets with your guns, what are you going to do? The only thing you're probably going to do is get killed. And if you do that, it's kind of all for nothing because you haven't progressed the circumstance at all. That's why I don't like fringe actors. I don't like anybody. The reason I associate fringe with the word actor is because you're pretending. When you go out and you voice your opinion a lot, likely you don't have a plan. Because if you had a plan, you'd be doing this. If you had a plan, you would be progressing your goal via the right channels that are going to lead to success. So what is that doing when you throw a brick through a window in a business that's black owned as a BLM protester that's white? What that is advocating for violence and then setting society up for failure. That's why I don't support any of these organizations, because you've already lost me. It's like being in a conversation with somebody and they start screaming in your face. Well, guess what? I'm not going to entertain the conversation now because you already went high and right, which is an analogy to shooting. You went high and right off the target. So we're not even going to have the conversation. So how do we have the conversation? We start with that. To take our community, which is building its reputation now. That's why we're moderating. That's why we're going to do the consulting in January. That's why we're going to pursue to train, assist, and advise to make these groups and organizations better so you could be advocates in your own backyard. It's what a lot of these groups that popped their head out of the sand tried to be, but they didn't have a plan. The difference is we have a plan. And I promise you, we won't set you up for failure. We will set you up for success. The start point for that is Dustin is going to look at doing a campaign letter for local sheriffs, for local leaders, once approved, after the consultation, once approved, will be able to start reaching out to their sheriffs in their local counties to see if we can get some legislative energy behind the message that is American Contingency. And I just had weird deja vu like that. I've said that before, or like that happened. That was cool. All right. Adding new features in locals or standalone app going forward. The standalone app process starts Friday. I have a guy who's flying in as an IT manager, who is the first person that we've looked at after filtering down, that's flying in to be able to start this process. The process doesn't take long. The process actually isn't arduous. It's not stringent. The process is not that expensive because we're going to piggyback on infrastructure and then create the user interface that is going to be American Contingency for the dissemination of all the things that I said before. So it's going to happen. Locals, we work with locals every single week to optimize the experience. It's not perfect, guys. But guess what? It's what we have right now that's protected. It's the one place that you can go. You can give your opinion. You could be who you want to be outside of being ugly. And we could disseminate this information without the threat of being shut down. Again, headquarters has experienced this. We have navigated, flanked, and maneuvered on every obstacle we faced thus far. The shutdown of everything, including my own website for Fieldcraft Survival, because it had American Contingency swag in it and was associated. We lost everything. I mean, my business in 3 days lost $50,000 to $60,000 from sales because of the merchant service being shut down, and then the Shopify account being shut down with no avail. Well, that legislative comment or question that was asked, very smart, because that's how we truly get things done. I hope one day that American Contingency can stand behind, in the next 4 years, the right candidate who's going to lead this country to becoming what it always was and is. Last question. How do you recommend handling members that do not want to do vetting or join AmCon itself, just a local site? So look, the AmCon side, the AmCon, which is perceived as just being locals, we actually keep track of everybody's emails just as a contingency if we lose the locals website. Members who don't want to vet are fine. There are going to be parts of our society that don't want to vet, but they should not be parts of recognized, affiliated AmCon organizations. So if you have a group as a leader of American Contingency and you have members in your group that don't want to be vetted, there better be a good reason for it, or they shouldn't be members. I mean, look, there's some guys who don't want to vet because of very specific circumstances, which are very rare. But everybody that is an official member of an affiliated AmCon group, meaning you're going to go through the process of getting lined out with Dustin to get consulted, to get optimized, to get support, and to get training, and even on a scale, get avocation for the call campaign. Dustin, we should have that articulated on a graphic, because I think that's a great phase line to line out in progression.
Absolutely.
Then so be it. They don't have to be vetted. They just can't be a part of that organization. Some people who have hit me up who have criminal records, we don't discriminate against people who have served their time via their crime, depending on the crime. If you have violently assaulted people, depending on the level of assault, you will not be vetted. If you have touched a child, in any way, if you are on the sex offenders registry, you will not be vetted. It's as simple as that. Why? One reason why is because I don't want that kind of person intermingling with human beings, not knowing or understanding that that person is that way. And I'm also not going to have identification markers for people who are in that category. So if you're a law-abiding citizen and you had a misdemeanor, you smoked some weed, you went to prison, you got in a bar fight, and you went to jail, you can get vetted. We just won't stand for vetting of violent offenders, nor can we host events and moderate groups that don't have all vetted members. That is a very legal, liable thing that we have to abide by, but also the assurances we want to give to our members when we host events and when we continue to scale what is American Contingency. If you're an American Contingency group and you're advocating for your local sheriff, that's a good thing. But if you have a group of people who you don't know their background and status, that's a bad thing. You need to encourage them to pay. Some people have outright said, I'm not paying that $20-something to get vetted. That's problematic for me. I mean, if you're listening to this video and you want to look at numbers and then the amount of time that I invest in this video alone, my hourly rate for some corporations is $25,000 an hour. Yeah, Oracle pays me that much. So when we're looking at value and then we're looking at how much we're investing, if you don't think $20 is worth your investment, this probably, for getting you vetted, then this probably isn't the organization for you. It's as simple as that. And no harm, no foul. There are plenty of organizations, plenty of communities that need help in other ways. We are just set in our goals and objectives and kind of the parameters that we line out. One last thing I want to mention is the partners that we've partnered with to benefit you. usccapartners.com/AmCon, which Dustin is going to put in the link, even put on the comment for you. usccapartners.com/AmCon. We've been working with USCCA because they offer this insurance for you in defense of your life, because it is your life. Even if you survive the Self-Defense Act, you're still fighting for your life, because all the legal, especially biased and left-wing activists that are the district attorneys of some places are changing the use of force policy. So if you defend your life, like I've seen police officers do against a deadly weapon, which has been declared a deadly weapon, and now they're changing use of force, your life is on the fringe of becoming locked behind a cell jail the rest of your adult life. Yeah, I mean, these things are affecting people's lives in a disgusting way. USCCA is offering insurance via the policies that are outlined on usccapartners.com/AmCon, and you guys save. You also get benefits as being a member of not only AmCon, but also having the insurance that is USCCA. At our expo, for example, we will be hosting a special event for everybody who is an AmCon member, but also a USCCA member, just hosted by USCCA for appreciation towards you and your membership. It's not expensive. It sets you up for insurance. You got a lawyer on QRF, and it gives you all the education and benefits that you need to be better prepared, and I'm all on board that. That's something that I'll pitch and stand behind. Guys, thank you so much for coming on here. The Q&A sessions, which are these bi-weekly sessions. Is it bi-weekly, Dustin?
Yeah, we can do them.
Okay. Yeah. I think we're doing a bi-weekly. Look at these as a way for us to come together and answer all the things that are on your mind. Your questions, your input, your comments are so valuable and important to me on growing what this is. If it wasn't for your support, we wouldn't be in the position now to help people. This scaled looks like something beautiful and amazing, because already what it is right now is beautiful and amazing. It's people coming together under a common cause that is being a better American. And what's better than that? Absolutely nothing. That is the best. Family first, and let's look at ourselves, our families, and our communities to protect and to become better prepared. We'll all be better off for that. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Until next time, peace out.
Okay, you're muted.